Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. From a young age, we are shaped by the expectations around us. We quickly learn what is right and wrong, what is acceptable, and what must be hidden. Gradually, we adapt to a world that teaches us to fit into tight molds, often at the expense of precious parts of who we truly are. Family, school, friends, and work, each of these social structures imposes rules and expectations. But the issue isn't just about the dark things we suppress, like aggressive impulses or instinctual desires. The real problem is that, along with these, we also bury talents, passions, and unique fragments of our personality. Think about it. How many times have you felt like you've lost something essential within yourself? A vibrant, creative, or purposeful part that was left behind at some point? Over time, life can feel less like a masterpiece in progress and more like an unfinished project, gathering dust with regret. And here lies the central question. What separates who we are today from our fullest potential? Carl Jung believed the answer lies in the shadow, the repressed and neglected part of our psyche. The shadow isn't just the side we hide from others, it's the side we hide even from ourselves. Thoughts, desires, and impulses we judge as unacceptable continue to influence us in subtle and unexpected ways, despite being ignored. We like to think of ourselves as rational, balanced, and morally upright. But the truth is, we harbor desires that aren't always so noble. We are impulsive, seek pleasure and power, and have a dark side that can be as creative as it is aggressive, as destructive as it is transformative. What happens when we bury these parts? Jung explained that none of it disappears. Everything we repress goes straight to the unconscious, where it accumulates, creating an invisible yet powerful tension. This tension shapes the decisions we make, the way we react, and even the repetitive behavior cycles we can't seem to break. And all of this is masked by the persona, the face we show the world, the social role we play to be accepted. It's our carefully constructed facade, often disconnecting us from who we really are. However, the shadow isn't just a reservoir of flaws and weaknesses. It's also where our rawest potential resides. Recognizing and integrating it isn't about succumbing to the worst in us, but about embracing our wholeness. Because as long as we ignore the shadow, we remain divided, fragmented, and unable to reach what we could truly become. Here's a thought to consider. Could the discomfort you sometimes feel be a call? A reminder that what you seek out there may actually be hidden within you? Perhaps it's time to shine a light and explore the parts of your psyche that have remained in the shadows for so long. Because, like plants that grow in both light and darkness, only by integrating all parts of who we are can we transform fully. Imagine yourself in a play. The stage is lit, the audience watches closely, and you wear a mask. This is the role you play, the character you've chosen to present to the world. This mask is your persona, the side you choose to show, carefully crafted to meet social norms and expectations. The persona isn't inherently negative. After all, we all need one to navigate society. It helps us build connections, adapt to environments, and play functional roles in life. At work, at home, or among friends, we wear different personas to fit into various contexts. But the question is, how much of this mask genuinely represents who you are? Carl Jung described the persona as the interface between the individual and the world. It forms in childhood as we learn what is acceptable and desirable. Family, school, and even social media shape this facade. Traits that earn approval are reinforced, while those that cause rejection are repressed and sent to the shadows. For example, imagine a child who loves to question everything. If they grow up in an environment where obedience is valued above all else, this questioning nature is quickly suppressed. The child learns to stay silent and agree, leaving this part of their personality behind. The same happens with creativity stifled in favor of practicality or emotional sensitivity, suppressed in favor of strength and independence. Over time, we begin to confuse the mask with who we really are. The problem arises when we fully identify with the persona. When we forget it is just one part of the whole, we start living an incomplete, fragmented life. We may appear successful or happy to others, yet feel an inexplicable void. This happens because the persona is like a well-decorated stage, but with a basement full of things we don't want to or cannot face. That basement is where the shadow resides. The persona isn't a lie but a partial truth. The danger lies in believing it is all we are. The mask we build to please the world becomes a prison when it disconnects us from our essence. Here's the challenge. How can we navigate the world without losing ourselves in the mask? How can we accept that the persona is necessary, yet never let it suppress what lies behind it? The answer begins with the courage to look at what has been relegated to the shadows. The shadow isn't just the ugly side of ourselves, but also the place where the fragments that make us truly unique reside. Ready to explore what's behind the mask? Carl Jung once said something powerful. What we deny in ourselves controls us. What we accept frees us. The shadow is like an invisible backpack we carry throughout life. In it, we store everything we deem unacceptable or improper. Repressed anger, unadmitted desires, and memories we prefer to forget. Over time, this backpack becomes so heavy that it starts to affect our posture, pace, and even direction. But here's the problem. Ignoring the contents of this backpack doesn't make it disappear. On the contrary, everything we repress finds unexpected ways to surface. Have you ever noticed how certain reactions seem to come out of nowhere? How a small disagreement can lead to an explosive outburst of anger, or how certain fears seem irrational, yet still paralyze you? These are the signs of the shadow working behind the persona, influencing your thoughts and behaviors in ways you don't always understand. Jung described the shadow as the side of our psyche we reject, because it doesn't align with the image we want to project. But contrary to popular belief, it isn't just a reservoir of flaws or weaknesses. The shadow also holds repressed talents, stifled creativity, and neglected passions, parts of us that could transform our lives if we had the courage to recognize them. For instance, imagine someone who avoids leadership roles because they fear appearing authoritarian. This fear, rooted in the shadow, might cause them to reject their own ability to influence and inspire others. Or think of someone who suppresses their emotional sensitivity, believing vulnerability is a sign of weakness. In the end, this person might miss out on genuine connections and live in a constant state of disconnection from themselves. The shadow isn't our enemy but a reflection of what needs to be integrated. The problem arises when it remains ignored. Everything we avoid confronting turns into repetitive behavior cycles, patterns of failure, toxic relationships, self-sabotage. And you might be wondering, how can we identify the shadow? The answer may be uncomfortable but liberating. Look at what bothers you most about others. Jung called this projection, an unconscious way of attributing to others the qualities we refuse to accept in ourselves. If you feel disdain for someone arrogant, could it be that you're suppressing your own need for self-assertion? If you judge someone for being overly emotional, are you denying your own right to express emotions? Imagine walking through a hallway filled with mirrors. With each step, your reflection changes, highlighting different angles of who you are. Now, imagine that some of these mirrors don't just show you, but reflect parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed. Characteristics you've repressed, hidden, or never acknowledged. This is the essence of projection. Others become our mirrors, showing aspects of our shadow that we haven't yet faced. Carl Jung described projection as a trap of the unconscious. Instead of accepting our flaws, weaknesses, or even hidden potentials, we project them onto others. It's as if we're saying, "That's not me." It's that person who is wrong, inadequate, or irritating. This dynamic, although unconscious, has a profound impact on how we perceive and interact with the world. For example, think of someone you simply cannot stand. Maybe it's a coworker who always seems to want to be the center of attention, or a neighbor who constantly complains about everything. What makes these traits so unbearable? Could it be that, on some level, they reflect something you don't accept in yourself? This is the power of projection. We don't see others as they truly are, but through the filters of our own shadow. And the more we deny these repressed parts, the more intense and distorted the reflection becomes. But projection isn't just about flaws. It can also hide repressed strengths. For instance, you might deeply admire someone who is courageous and independent, without realizing that you're ignoring your own potential to cultivate these qualities. In this case, projection becomes a reminder of forgotten parts of yourself that are asking to be acknowledged. This constant projection isn't something we choose. It's automatic, stemming from our inability to confront the shadow directly. The problem is that, as long as we project, we lose opportunities for growth. Instead of facing our fears, desires, or weaknesses, We see them as external problems, distant from ourselves. So how can we use projection to our advantage? The answer lies in self-awareness. The next time someone provokes a strong emotion in you, whether it's anger, disdain, or admiration, ask yourself, what exactly bothers or fascinates me so much? And more importantly, could this reflect something that exists within me? This exercise might be uncomfortable, but it is also profoundly transformative. It challenges us to look beyond the surface and explore the roots of our reactions. Jung believed that by integrating these projections, we could begin dissolving the shadow and becoming more whole. However, shadow integration isn't an immediate process. It's a constant practice of observing, questioning, and accepting. It requires courage to confront what's hidden and humility to admit that we're not always who we'd like to be. And here's the most interesting part. By recognizing our projections, we begin to see others more authentically. The complaining neighbor isn't just annoying, they might reflect our difficulty in accepting criticism. The show-off coworker might not simply be arrogant, they could remind us of a repressed desire for recognition. By embracing these discoveries, we not only understand ourselves better, but also start relating to others in a deeper and more empathetic way. After all, the mirrors we encounter in life aren't there to judge us, they're there to teach us. The next step is to learn how to use this reflection as a tool for self-discovery and growth. There is no light without shadow, and no wholeness without imperfection. Life often pressures us to choose between opposites, to be strong or vulnerable, rational or emotional, bold or restrained. But Jung invites us to see beyond this duality. He reminds us that wholeness lies not in rejecting parts of who we are, but in integrating them. Light and shadow, strengths and weaknesses, virtues and imperfections. Shadow integration is an essential step on this path, not because we must accept it as inevitable, but because it offers an invitation to understand what we've ignored about ourselves. Every repressed impulse, every neglected talent, every suppressed emotion is part of the mosaic of our essence. Recognizing them isn't surrendering to internal chaos, but bringing order to what has been scattered. Imagine an artist standing before a blank canvas. If they reject certain colors, their work will never be complete. Similarly, when we integrate our shadow, we add depth and contrast to the masterpiece of our lives. We accept that we aren't perfect, but it's precisely this imperfection that makes us human and unique. However, integration isn't a theoretical concept. It happens in practice, through daily choices. For instance, when you face an internal conflict between being firm and understanding, between yielding or standing your ground, integration means finding balance between these extremes. It's about recognizing the value of both forces and using them consciously. Jung described this process as individuation, the journey to becoming who you truly are, rather than what others expect you to be. It's a path of self-awareness, but also transformation, as it requires translating your discoveries into real actions. Here's the challenge. Shadow integration doesn't happen all at once. It's an ongoing process of observing, accepting, and aligning. It takes humility to admit what we don't want to see, and courage to let it transform us. For example, instead of repressing your need for recognition, you could use it as motivation to create something meaningful. Or, rather than ignoring your fear of failure, you might channel it into strategic caution. Integrating the shadow isn't about letting it control you, but harnessing it as a source of energy to move forward. The result of this integration is a sense of wholeness, a state where your actions genuinely reflect who you are. It's not about being perfect, but being complete. It's understanding that your strengths shine brighter when contrasted with your vulnerabilities, and that your authenticity lies in harmonizing all parts of yourself. And as you move closer to this wholeness, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see others with greater compassion, because you recognize in them the same complexities you've accepted within yourself. Integration doesn't just transform your relationship with yourself, but also with the world around you. So here's the reflection that moves us forward. If wholeness is the goal, what steps can we take today to bring us closer to it? Imagine standing before a massive puzzle. Each piece represents a fragment of you, your persona, your shadow, your projections, and everything you have yet to explore. Individuation is the process of assembling these pieces, not to create an idealized version of yourself, but to uncover who you are at your core. Jung described individuation as the journey to wholeness, where all parts of our psyche, conscious and unconscious, work together in harmony. It's not about eliminating flaws or weaknesses, but recognizing them as integral parts of what makes us human. It's about accepting that light and shadow coexist, and that this duality gives depth and meaning to our existence. The path of individuation begins with a simple yet challenging step: awareness. Bringing the unconscious to light and examining the layers of the persona with curiosity and courage. This doesn't mean abandoning who you are to others, but balancing external expectations with your internal truth. The guiding question for this journey is, am I living a life that truly reflects who I am? This journey requires time and a willingness to face discomfort. Every discovery can challenge old beliefs, buried memories, and even the image you hold of yourself. But the goal isn't to cling to what you uncover, it's to integrate, learn, and keep moving forward. There's a powerful detail in this process. The shadow, far from being a burden, is also a source of latent strength. When we learn to recognize and channel what has been repressed, these hidden forces can become powerful tools. Consider your need for recognition, ambition, or desire to stand out. Instead of repressing them as selfish or negative, you can harness them as motivation to create, lead, and build something aligned with your essence. For instance, a repressed desire for affirmation could transform into courage to take on a new project or share your ideas. The energy once used to suppress certain impulses can be redirected into conscious actions that resonate with your purpose. Individuation isn't a solitary journey either. Relationships play a crucial role in the process. They act as mirrors, helping us see what we can't perceive alone. It's in interactions, conflicts, and connections that we often find the missing pieces of our internal puzzle. Here's the beauty of the process. Instead of fighting the darker aspects of your psyche, you integrate them as allies. This acceptance creates space for genuine growth, allowing you to build a life guided by authenticity. But the journey isn't linear. It's more like a constant cycle of discovery, integration, and transformation. At each stage of life, new aspects of the psyche may emerge, asking to be acknowledged. And with every cycle, you become more whole, more aligned with your essence. In the end, individuation isn't a destination, but a process. It's not about achieving perfection, but embracing the complexity of what it means to be human. And in doing so, you realize that the journey itself is the reward. So, the question that remains is, what pieces of your puzzle are you still ignoring? Because the first step to becoming whole is recognizing that you already have everything you need. What's missing is the courage to look, integrate, and live authentically. True transformation isn't an event, it's a daily choice. What will you do with your shadow starting today? Share your thoughts below. And remember, knowledge is the path to true freedom. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.